all bullshit and I hate it here! Beast Wars, Canadian television, Emmy nominated. All of these things are true. However, it doesn't do time travel very well, even though that's the crux of the show, and I'm going to explain that to you. I'm not really going to explain it to you, I'm going to tell it to you. I've kidnapped my friend to let me do this, and so let's get started. The number one thing that we must remember about Beast Wars is it all starts with our good friend Megan. Alright? We all know how Beast Wars starts. Beast Wars starts with Megatron making a time gambit where he goes back in the past. He's a rogue Predacon, okay? We learned this at the end of season 2, but he's a rogue Predacon. The Council of Predacons don't like him. He goes back in time. He makes his time gambit because he believes if he changes the past, he can change the future where the Decepticons went and everything's jolly, okay? He does this using a real-life item called the Golden Disc, okay? What is the Golden Disc, for those who don't know what Beast Wars is? The Golden Disc is a real-ass thing. They threw it up on a satellite, and it is basically a golden vinyl with a couple star charts and the Hoover Dam and whale noises for aliens if they ever find us, okay? Megatron has this. He has this, and this is important because he uses this disc to test what kind of timeline is here. Because even though they've invented time travel, Megatron does not understand the particulars of it, which is where we get into the problem, alright? If our timeline, using the Golden Disc to predict the future, because it is from the future, now in the past, if time is predestined, things will happen as they are happening, or undetermined, things can change, okay? And then another important point about this, right? Dinobot. Dinobot is here too. He's very important to this. Very important. Little guy. He is important because he too, just like Megatron with the Golden Disc, because he finds the disc is split into two halves. There's two halves of the disc. There's the whale noises on one side, and then the star charts, which also have Earth Decepticon bases from the 80s on it, on the other, along with Megatron evil cackling with like a message to any Decepticon in the future because he could predict that time travel at some point would exist. He believed this would be a reality, so he like threw it out there like, if anyone who time travels finds this, you can come backwards and kill fucking Optimus for me. And so he has the Golden Disc. And Megatron is, and the two Megatrons, the past and future Megatrons are talking to each other in the disc, okay? Dinobot has one half of this disc, and he somehow divines from this piece of technology from the 1980s that he's going to die. And I don't know how he could do that, considering the only relevant information that the show gives us, but what's on that fucking disc is whale noises in Decepticon base locations and Megatron evil laughing along with the location of the Ark. I don't know how he figures this out. He's a genius. He's smarter than me. So Dinobot, at this point, has a different idea to Megatron about whether or not the timeline is predestined or undetermined. Dinobot, with his honor system, believes that he is destined to die by divining this information from the Golden Disc. Megatron is not of this belief. And the way they prove this is, if you all remember from season 1, before Dinobot fights the big one, I have to explain all this before I get into my problems with it. Is Megatron destroys a mountain. He destroys a mountain. Destroyed. And what this proves, and the reason why he destroys a mountain, is because he has the Golden Disc. He's playing it he does something incredible. He makes a vinyl become a video. And he has it as a projection on his arm. He transcends physical limitations of media to provide us exposition on the timeline. And via this experiment of destroying a mountain, he figures out that the timeline is actually undetermined.
So we're working on multiverse theory then?
No. Because, and this is where shit gets horrid, we have determined from destroying the mountains, watching it live, change shape in the episode, that it is an undetermined timeline, and yet, there's a fucking prophecy! This cannot exist in an undetermined timeline because they should constantly be changing the future. And so this is not compatible with its current systems. None of this together makes any sense. We can't have a prophecy with an undetermined timeline. This is not how it works. That's not how it works, okay? Dinobot believes he is destiny bound, but then he witnesses Megatron's experiment with the golden disc, and he realizes that he can change his destiny. And this is before we find out about the prophecy, which is at the end of season 3, alright? When the prodigal son Tigatron and Air Razor's baby comes back and is Jesus again in a different way than Optimus. So Dinobot no longer believes he is destiny bound. He believes he has free will. We are going to learn this is also a lie. Because Dinobot, after divining that he dies from the golden disc, still fucking dies even though he makes a different decision. Why? Because the timeline, all along, was always predestined. But it can't be. But it can't be because we know, from the mountains destroyed, that it's undetermined. That they can change the future. But yet there's a prophecy, and yet Dinobot still dies on the predestined timeline, and yet Dinobot is destiny bound. So how does all this make sense?
I don't know. How?
Huh? Thank you for asking, man behind the camera and people in my audience section about to call me stupid. There has to be a turning point in which the timeline goes from undetermined to predestined. And I know that turning point. However, this does not make sense. And they never explain it. And they go for this prophecy thing at the end. It makes no sense because they make this big deal when they find the Ark, right? They find the Ark and they find an early copy of the Bible written before Optimus, before the 1980s. Which has this prophecy, which means it was always supposed to happen, which means Megatron was always supposed to see the mountains destroyed, which means the mountains just did that, like JF Kennedy's head. But there had to be a turning point when the timeline became undetermined to predestined, and that turning point is Dinobot dying despite having free will to change things. So let's break this down a little differently. In order for the time travel in Beast Wars to make sense, we have to sit ourselves with the idea that Dinobot has free will and Dinobot is destiny bound. These two things have to coexist in the same dimension. Both have to be true. Because Megatron, with the golden disc, has seen a change in the future and he makes conscious choices of free will. Everyone's following still. Great. When, at this time, the mountains are destroyed, the timeline is still undetermined. Dinobot and the Co. still retain free will, but they are still semi-bound by destiny. What changes is Dinobot foreseeing his own death. And the only way I can describe how it goes from an undetermined to a predestined timeline is Dinobot changes it to a predestined timeline by changing the circumstances surrounding his death. He still dies. He is still destiny bound, but he uses his free will to change the circumstances of how he dies, and that is the turning point which makes it go from undetermined to predestined, sealing into place the covenant, the early version of the Bible and prophecy, allowing all of these ideas to be true. Do I think the writers did that? No. No, I don't. I really don't. This prophecy is only brought up in the last episode of the show. And every other time time travel is brought up, it is always in terms of undetermined outcomes. They make a huge deal of this at the end of season 2 when Megatron tries to kill Optimus and everyone's frames start glitching out because nobody knows what's going to happen in the future. In season 3, there is an incredible plan by tarantulas to destroy everyone, and the entire time the Predacons are like, are you an idiot? You're literally going to kill everyone. And Tarantulas is like, no, maybe you two, but I'm not descended from you guys. I'm a different breed. And then he explodes badly. So everything has been talked about in undetermined terms. And that pisses me off so bad that I wish Tigatron and AirRaiser never had a child. And that's all I have for you. I don't have a conclusion to this. I'm just mad about a children's show from 20 years ago having inconsistent time travel rules. And this is my best explanation for making it all work. So thank you for joining me today. I hope you enjoyed this. Leave a couple like, good enough, welcome back, Unraveled. Anything. Make sure to like and subscribe.